And I always love referring back to the physicist Stephen Hawking, the guy couldn't
Mhm.
speak, talk,
Yeah,
walk, couldn't do anything,
right.
and he was still at the top of his game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And everyone else learnt how to be around him. They all adjusted themselves, they all stepped up, and they all grew, and they all found new ways to interact with somebody who most people would have written off.
Right.
And the only person who didn't write himself off was him.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to episode 247 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. My guest today is Brooke Lang, a speech language pathologist and the founder of integrative reconnective aphasia therapy. She has been described by one of her patients as the real deal. And today we hope to bring you a few things to consider as you go about recovering your speech after stroke. Brooke Lang, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I reached out because one of my clients, coaching clients, told me that you are the real deal when it comes to supporting people with regards to recovery from aphasia.
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky to do what I do. It's such a crazy thing, and it's quite common. Um, uh,
How did you get involved in aphasia help? How does somebody get motivated to work in that space? Usually I've found that a lot of people who work in the space of supporting other stroke survivors or people who have gone through a rough time have got somebody that they know or a history of someone that was struggling with something similar. What's your path towards this type of work?
so actually, I decided to be a speech pathologist. Um, because in high school there was one of the students who had cerebral palsy. And I remember he was not able to communicate verbally at all. But he had a device. And I just found it amazing that although he didn't express himself verbally, how much he was able to communicate using the device. And that's kind of just what made me start looking into speech pathology. It is such a broad field. We do so many different things, from working with kids on articulation to working with tracheostomies and laryngectomies, and then aphasia. I ended up doing my fellowship at the VA here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we had a program where we served veterans who had aphasia, and we would see them intensively. So we would see them for a month, and we would see them for 5 hours of treatment a day. And I think that's really where I just fell in love with it, and discovered that it's such a challenging area. There's no black and white. Everything has to be so personalized and individualized, but it's sort of what I enjoyed about it.
The vets would have come to have aphasia in a number of different ways. Is it stuff that's related to what's happened on the battlefield, or is it stuff that's related to regular life, like stroke and those types of things?
A combination. So some had gunshot wounds, but at most were unrelated, I would say, and more likely as a result of a stroke to the left hemisphere that resulted in them having aphasia.
Yeah. So when you get approached by somebody to help them with uh, a speech issue, how do you determine what their issue is? Because you hear about aphasia, but there's a lot of things that are stopping people from speaking. It's not necessarily the ability to not make the words and say the words. It could be something else. So what are some of the other things that cause communication issues?
Well, I mean, when you have aphasia, there's, we think of it as a language disorder. So it's not just somebody having trouble communicating verbally. They likely also have trouble processing language, and as well as reading, understanding what they read, reading aloud, and writing. So all of that sort of language expression and the processing piece can be impacted. And the thing with aphasia is everybody's different. They say that when you've seen one person with aphasia, you've seen one person with aphasia. And it's so true. Even if, the area of damage is quite similar, they can still have completely different symptoms and characteristics. So, I mean, you really have to take each individual person as an individual person, talk about what their challenges are, do the appropriate assessments. We have certain things that we do to kind of dig into what we feel that underlying issue might be, and then do our best to target that impairment and that deficit.
When I hear 5 hours of rehabilitation a day, intense rehabilitation a day, I'm tired just listening to that. I imagine
Sure.
it's really
Ew.
difficult. Yeah, right. You're going to sit through it. Somebody with a stroke who has aphasia as one of the deficits that they've acquired is also probably suffering from fatigue. How do you work towards 5 hours, or do you just start with 5 hours? What's the idea behind doing such an amount of therapy? I remember trying to learn to walk again. We were doing 5 minutes at the beginning, and then 10 minutes, and then 30 minutes. And I was exhausted after every one of those efforts. So how does that intense amount of therapy help people overcome the deficit, and how does it support them to, well, get their speech back?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So in that program, the individuals tend to be more in like the chronic phase. So they're at least a year out from their stroke. Not that they're not still experiencing that neurofatigue. But they've sort of gotten past that initial time. And is it something that they work up towards? No, it's what they sign up for. And, we put them through a 3-hour assessment, and see how they kind of handle that. And I mean, it's amazing what people are willing to do, to do their best to recover. I mean, with my own practice, I do have intensive programs too, where people sign up to do 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And even doing it on the computer. And again, people surprise me time after time. It is such hard work. It has got to be exhausting, but they power through, and, people are willing to do what they can to get their communication back.
Is there something about doing a work to exhaustion? So I'm thinking about going into the gym. You always hear about, let's do that last set, that last rep. You always hear about moving beyond what's comfortable and then going to exhaustion and then stopping. Does that benefit somebody? Because I would have thought that when you take somebody to exhaustion, that their ability, especially in the 4th hour and in the 5th hour, the ability to retain information and to hold on to new learning severely declines. Or is that just not true?
Yeah, I don't think it's the same as comparing it to, your gym exercise workout. I think you're right. And there's still a lot of research, excuse me, that they're doing to try and figure out what is that comfort spot where it's a good amount of intensive therapy. Like, they've found that intensive therapy can be really valuable, but how much and for how long is really kind of the big question that they're doing a lot of studies looking into and examining that. But, I think I tell my patients it's just as important to rest as it is to work on their recovery, and equally important. So I encourage breaks, and naps, because I think that's huge, and it's what's necessary in order for their brains to make the necessary changes.
When would you rather see somebody? Would you rather see them at the very early stages of their stroke recovery, or is it okay to see them after some time has elapsed? I imagine that if it was me, I'd want to go to you immediately, but some people don't have the opportunity to, and then they may also feel like, oh man, it's too much time has passed, and now maybe it's too late for me to get my communication back.
I have a lot to say about that, actually. So
Tell me.
I think it depends. Yes, typically I think I'd like to see somebody right away, because what can happen, so in that first, and neurologists will tell their patients, that first 6 months to a year is crucial. And it is, but also people need to know that after that first year, they can absolutely still make a lot of gains. So just because that 1 year mark is up does not mean that that's it. But a lot of times if I see somebody earlier on, they might still be having medical challenges and not be as stable as they should be in order to fully benefit from the treatment. Like if they're having seizures, or again, if they're, still getting a lot of tests and they're extra tired. And again, they have that fatigue piece is another thing to take into consideration. But sometimes when I see individuals later, which is sort of when I do end up seeing probably most of them, they're usually at least 6 months out. If not, I get people who are 8 years out, and want to pursue treatment. But sometimes they've developed some maladaptive behaviors over that time that can be tough to break, but that need to be sort of broken before we can move forward and really, work on the language recovery piece.
When I hear maladaptive behaviors, what I hear is that they might have beliefs, thoughts, ideas about what's possible for them and why they can't communicate. And that's getting in their way of their communication more than their deficit or more than the injury has caused. So I tend to, it's not the right word, but I tend to relate to it as negative neuroplasticity, where they've, instead of had to use neuroplasticity for a positive purpose and getting a good outcome, they've created a neurological pathways, and they've applied neuroplasticity in a negative way. Perhaps they didn't know that they were doing this in a negative way, and then as a result of that, they've reinforced that inability to communicate. They believe it in every way. They think that it's potentially them forever, and then that they're getting in their own way of their ability to communicate. How does that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a piece of it. And I mean, I have had conversations with some of my patients telling them that you are the one standing in your own way at this point, and until you get out of it, you're not going to be able to move forward. And of course, that's easy for me to say. I'm not the one going through it. And it is no easy road. It is no easy feat. And aphasia can really disrupt not just the lives of the people with aphasia, but everybody around them and everything that it involves. But I also think, I think you bring up a really good point about that, almost like the mental, emotional, negative neuroplasticity end of things. But I think too, they develop just even like maladaptive behaviors with their speech, like starting a sentence over and over. They almost sound like they're stuttering because they won't finish or complete their thought. And it's their way of feeling like if I get that running start, maybe that word will come out, and they start their sentence, and they start their sentence, and they start their sentence over again until they can get that word. When I work with them, I do not want them going backwards. Just keep moving forward. And again, just some of that little stuff that can make a big difference early on But again, if they've been doing that for 5 years, it can be a bugger to break that, you know?
I hear you. So I hope you don't mind cussing, because I'm just going to cuss in context of
No,
one of
I love cussing. That's
my
good.
good. It's not normally a cussing podcast, but in the context of this particular case, so one of my clients, who's also one of your clients, can only get the word fuck out.
Yes.
And that fascinates me. Now, fuck and fuck and fuck. And that's kind of how he goes about expressing his level of frustration, depending on the tone and the length of it and the way that he says it. You can kind of grasp a little bit about how he's feeling about something.
Sure.
I know this is going to be a difficult question for you to answer. How is it possible for one word, and I'm gonna continue this by telling you in a moment the next part of this story and why I'm asking it. How is it possible with one word to be stuck there, and that's the only word? Okay, I know you might not be able to answer that. Also, my godfather passed away about 2 or 3 years ago, and he unfortunately had a tumor in his head, and it was inoperable. And when it grew, and all his faculties went away, most of them went away. The only word that he could communicate with was the same word. And he was, he's a Greek guy, came from Greece in the 1960s to Australia, had no language other than that one word. He was just throwing out to my godmother, his wife, fuck, fucking fucking fuck. And it was like ridiculous that I've come across it twice now. And I don't know how to even begin that conversation with you. I don't even know what to say, but I feel like you need to address it, because you're the speech therapist.
Fair. I can address some of it. So, and I have a third case relating to that God bless her, was a nun. And I kid you not,
sorry for laughing.
That was the only, right. But it's like, it's a heck of a thing, right? Yeah. Like, how awful. And so there are other individuals. So that's a more severe type of aphasia. Now there are, what sort of happens, what we believe happens, is it's almost like they get stuck in a phonological loop and they can't get out of it. And it takes a lot to start to get them out of it. They can be sort of the toughest individuals to treat. But the other piece is that any word like swearing tends to be highly emotional. And a lot of times, sometimes the first thing that ends up coming out, because the person's frustrated, they're scared, they're angry, is sometimes a swear word. And so we'll have people who come and say, my husband never swore before. We go to church every Sunday and now he has a trucker's mouth. And that can happen because, again, it's almost like an automatic thing that comes out. They have no control over it. And I've had patients too, and what's interesting, like you said, is their intonation for what they're trying to express is accurate within that F word framework, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I had a patient who all he could say was Dewey. So it wasn't a word. It was just a made up little 2-syllable chunk. And he would have full conversation in his Deweys. Dewey, the Dewey. And again, I knew if he was asking me a question, if he was excited about something, all in his Deweys.
Wow.
And so it's just a vicious cycle within that phonological loop. They can be broken of it, but it's tough because, again, it's like that loop has been reinforced over and over, and again, depending how long they've gone like that.
I would have thought. So I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So when somebody says one word, I'm figuring, okay, we can get 2 words. I'm certain of it. And then, and I'm not a speech pathologist, so I don't know the process, but I just stick on the fact that 1 word's possible, 2 words possible, and then we'll work on 3. So I figure that perhaps, and this is just me running with new hypotheses as you're describing what you're describing. If the word that comes out is an emotional response, I feel like then what we're doing is perhaps bypassing the head and creating a heart response, and it's kind of recruiting the heart to get the communication going where the head has not been able to. And maybe what that sounds like to me is that although that is a positive because we've got one word and we've got a way of expressing something, we've got some kind of expression, perhaps what we're doing is, again, that could be one of those things that diverts away from rehabilitating the head loop, the head path in communication from the mouth and the brain. Does that all resonate with you? Is there anything there that kind of sticks out with you that you think perhaps is plausible?
I think if it's that emotionally driven word, yeah, I do think that there has to be sort of something that shakes things up a bit. And I mean, very much aphasia therapy has to involve some sort of emotional support. Again, the more our mutual individual that I haven't really worked with, but sort of assessed, I mean, just the tension, you can see it, everything builds up. That is the worst thing for somebody with aphasia. But again, what do? He's trying so hard, he's frustrated, but until you get that person to relax, figure out a way to kind of work through it, words are not going to come out. The only thing that's going to come out is that bad word.
Yeah.
But what's interesting too about those individuals, more so I think when it's not an emotionally driven word, like the Dewey situation, if you play a video back of them talking in their Dewey, and you say, does that make sense what you're saying there? They say yes. So when they go back and listen, they're processing what's going back in is not accurate. So the problem becomes they're not aware always of what's coming out of their mouth, which is what makes them sometimes a very challenging treatment candidate. First you got to make them aware. So it's different. Again, everybody's kind of different. Sometimes the awareness piece can be a little bit better, but that can happen too. You got to think about not just what's coming out, but what's being looped back in.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to what you said about the tension and the stress and all that kind of stuff. And I've always said that stroke is a three-pronged approach. A recovery to stroke is a three-pronged approach. It's emotional, it's psychological, and it's physical. And in those headings, there'll be little subheadings. For emotional, it might be connecting to spirit or finding God or whatever. And then for psychological, it might be coming to terms with things. It might be letting go of old thought behaviors and thought patterns about what you're capable of. And for physical, it might be I'm afraid to walk and of falling over. And then it's like just pushing through the physical thing so that you can rehabilitate your arms, your legs. And maybe you have learned non-use. So somebody has had a physical injury, they've learned not to use that arm, and then that's the biggest thing standing in the way of them using their arm rather than the injury. And it sounds like what you're saying is you're confirming my idea, my thought that if you don't deal with anger, you can't create the right space perhaps for things to flow in a way that will support speech. And the way I see it is when you're tense and angry, you're not only is your physical body in a different state because you're all tense and tight and you can't move properly. Well, then that will impact your muscles of your throat and the way that your mouth works and your jaw works and all that kind of stuff. And then will also impact the kind of words that you're going to get out. So I feel like it decreases the number of words that you can practice simply because I know when I'm seriously angry, I can't talk about love and I can't talk about excitement.
Right. Sure.
My vocabulary just decreases dramatically, and it's not normally nice. So that being able to work on one's self as well as have speech therapy seems to be something that has to happen together. And that's what I try to encourage my clients to do, regardless of whether they have aphasia or not. I try to encourage them to do their therapies simultaneously or together, where one day is speech therapy and one day might be psychological counseling. One day might be physical therapy, and it's all being done because one does support the other. I feel like they all support each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, without question, the whole premise behind my practice is treating the whole person, right? If I'm just doing speech and language sessions and that's it, and I'm not considering anything else in that person's environment, whether it's internal or external, I'm failing them. And so, yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying, and I work on physical with my patients. Again, I'm not a physical therapist, but we can absolutely incorporate gestural movement. I make my patients use their right side, which is usually hemiparetic, and they're typing with their right hand or they're gesturing with their right hand. But then the emotional piece, I think, is huge. And again, if that's not taken care of, it stands in the way so much. And I can, as I've worked more with individuals, especially ones that get that tension, you can hear the difference in their voice when they let it go. Like they literally have a different voice. And I say to them, I said, I bet that's your old voice. And it's right on. And they start to realize that as soon as they just reset, I use that a lot. Like just stop, reset, take a breath, let it go. And as soon as they kind of just let it go, that word's there. Now, not always, right? But like there is something to that. And I know there's been a lot of research starting up too with like mindfulness and aphasia therapy. And I mean, again, I think there's something to be said for that. I think you have to, whatever approach works for you. But again, the emotional, mental well-being has to be taken care of.
Yeah. There's a thing you hear about in physical therapy, the plateau. And when people reach the plateau, they get sent off to go home because apparently it's too hard to treat people who are at a plateau. And, you know, therapists who are well-intentioned will say it's probably all you can expect to get back. Is there a plateau in recovering speech? How do you guys deal with a plateau? I don't know if there is one.
There are people who will, speech pathologists, neurologists, who will say that there is not a plateau. And it really bothers me to hear that word, or when people come to me and say, you know, I've been discharged from therapy because my speech pathologist told me I've plateaued. It's like nails on a chalkboard, because again, that can make the difference between that person saying, okay, I guess I'm done, and just being where they're at, versus being somebody like yourself who has had a heck of a recovery because you kept pushing forward. And I sometimes it's all it takes for them to kind of be crushed. And they might not pursue anything further. And it's just not the case. If they're continuing to work at it and there's some support around them, people with aphasia can continue to get better for years and years.
We have definitely discussed how we can get in our own way of recovery. But then there's some other things that happen to get in the way of recovery. Well-meaning loved ones sometimes might get in the way, and loved ones, or people who are not well-meaning, and they're not necessarily loved ones. But what are some of the tips that you can give to people who are trying to support somebody with aphasia? Because they would be completely not understanding it in most cases. They would have no idea how to even wrap their head around it. And they would have these ill-formed ideas of what the other person perhaps is trying to do or not doing, or how lazy they're being, or what are some of the tips that, and how do you involve family members in the rehabilitation of one of your clients?
I mean, I think the first thing is making sure that they're educated. And unfortunately, at least here in the US, when people are discharged from the hospital, a lot of times they don't even know they have aphasia, or that term's been thrown out and they have no idea what it means. And so I think just education with both the individual who's experiencing the aphasia and the caregivers or loved ones or whomever they are, and involvement in therapy. A lot of times, they come to the clinic and the loved one sits in the waiting room. I think loved ones should be involved if that person feels comfortable. I have some individuals who work really well together. I have others who don't, and that's fine too, but there's always ways around it. I think it's important for the individual with aphasia to be the first person or the main person to discuss what they want out of therapy. I think a lot of times the goals come from the wife or the husband or the daughter, when we never ask, well, what is it that you want? And it can be hard if somebody has trouble communicating, right? How are they going to tell me what they want? But again, there's ways to support their conversation. A lot of times they benefit from seeing words. I mean, there's ways to kind of, again, help provide visual support so they can understand and contribute to that process. So they need to be involved in the goals. And I think it's important to have not just, therapy, but incorporate speech and language tasks and even physical tasks, whatever it is that they're trying to rehab, without making it feel like therapy, and creating sort of a routine, so that, because a lot of times these people are used to being at work all day and now they don't have a job, they can't work, they're bored, they get depressed, they're isolated. So if they have something to stick to, something to commit to, I find that they have a lot more success in, maintaining that schedule, doing something productive, having a purpose for the day. So even if it's, they cook dinner every night. Okay, so while you cook dinner, talk about what it is that you're doing as you cook dinner. It's a language task that's already built into what you're doing, but you don't have to sit down and do work. I think go on a walk and talk about what you see. There's tons of things that you can do that, again, can be built into what you're doing, can kill a couple birds with one stone, and I think help you progress a little bit quicker. And it's kind of like a built-in home program.
Yeah. I love that idea of speaking through your process, whatever you're doing, whether you're walking or cooking, and what you see. I think that's brilliant. I mean, I remember that's how my children started to communicate really well when they were kids, right? We would go somewhere and they'll say, oh, dog. And then they would say, oh, bike. And then they would say all these things that they thought, that interested them and that they thought that I needed to know about. So I like that idea. You sometimes come across people who, on socials or wherever, they'll post something along the lines of, not stupid stroke, or not stupid aphasia, or not stupid one of the other communication disorders. I imagine a lot of people come in after having had successful life, we'll call it, we'll name it successful. One where they're walking, talking, working, doing all the regular things that we all do. And then they have this thing occur to them, and then they can't speak, and perhaps feel that they are somehow unintelligent.
Mhm.
I know that people are judged that way by uh, people who are ignorant to stroke and to all of the issues that it creates. How do you address that? How do you know if that's a thing that's happening to somebody while they are coming to therapy?
Um, well, you can tell just by their demeanor, for one thing, I think, if they're feeling that way. And I always try to remind my patients, because it's easy to feel that way, because as a society, I think we do tend to judge people based on how they communicate. And what happens is then the person with aphasia is being, once they open their mouth and somebody realizes there's something wrong with them, either they're looked at strange, somebody starts talking really loud to them, and they're condescending, and so, even if that person didn't say, wow, you must not be very smart, they feel that way, rightfully so. But I like to tell them that there's nothing has changed with how smart or how intelligent you are. All that knowledge, all that skill is still there. You just have some trouble accessing. It's an access issue, but it's all there. And I encourage them to tell other people that, whether they have to show them on a note card, or, because, right, like you said, I mean, people make t-shirts out of it, hats, but it's out there because, I mean, people are being judged all the time. People think that individuals with aphasia are on drugs, are, mentally ill. I mean, you name it, and they've been accused of such. So, and that's just a lack of awareness, lack of education. We got to do more with that.
We've spoken about aphasia a lot simply because what inspired me to get in touch with you was my client telling me about how amazing you were and that I needed to get you on the podcast. And I do what my clients say. But I imagine there's a whole bunch of other issues that arise as a result of stroke, and then language, and then communication. What are some of the other conditions that this conversation applies to that is not necessarily aphasia? Does it apply, this conversation, to other speech disorders that we've...
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, I think, again, we take communication for granted, and don't realize what we use it for, and how much we need it sometimes. And I think that anybody with some sort of speech impediment or speech impairment, again, gets sort of judged. And I think it can be, again, as a society, I don't know that we're always accepting of that. And I think we're quick to jump to conclusions about what might be going on. And there's not always a whole lot of support, for those individuals. So I think they're always, again, whether it's aphasia or something else, I think they're always kind of struggling to find ways to, make that order at the drive-through a little bit easier. And again, any high stress, of course, they're going to be a little bit more anxious in that kind of situation. Or if they even just have to go up to the bank teller and make a, transaction, it's a stressful situation. And as soon as they open their mouth, if they have trouble communicating, everything can kind of fall apart. I have found too that when somebody has a physical impairment, which, you can have aphasia and have no physical impairment, or you can be hemiparetic on that right side. So have some, weakness on your right side, right arm, right leg. The individuals who have physical impairments tend to be sort of less judged because there's something obviously going on, right?
Mhm.
It's those individuals, and again, they call it an invisible disability.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? So they otherwise appear completely fine, completely normal. And then they open their mouth and it's like, what's going on? So I think the emotional impact on those individuals can be, a little bit more, because again, they don't have any other way to show that there's something going on with them. And so they tend to be a little bit more isolated and have a little bit more trouble coping.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I can
know?
relate to that. That was my challenge. I didn't have aphasia per se, and I was never diagnosed with a speech disorder, but after the second time I had a bleed in my head, I lost my ability to communicate properly. I wasn't diagnosed. I didn't go to a neuropsych for neuropsychological assessment or anything like that. It was completely missed. And then when I was at home, after having gone through the first bleed and being, again, appearing quote unquote normal, and communicating as I always had, it was strange for my wife to adjust to the second bleed, and everyone around me to the second bleed, and how I was not able to communicate. So I would struggle to start a sentence. Sometimes I would start a sentence and then not be able to finish it. Sometimes I would be in the middle of a sentence and just go onto a completely different tangent and didn't even know what I started out trying to say. And that was the hardest part. The hardest part was getting the looks and then people thinking that I was joking or I was being funny or all these things. all I was trying to do was have my say something that was relevant to what was happening to me or I needed to get across. And it was really difficult. And then because I also have left side deficits where my left side feels completely different to my right side, people assume again that I'm 100% recovered or I've overcome everything that stroke has thrown at me. And I can say that perhaps emotionally and psychologically I've overcome it all, but I haven't physically, because I can never overcome it all, because those things that I've got are permanent. And when I have a bad day, those things, they express themselves more. Those deficits express themselves more, and they make it harder for me to go about my day, be it stay up late if I want to go to an event with a family, be it feel good about being out in public or in crowds, feeling good about walking, feeling good about even communicating. Everything kind of changes and my deficits get exacerbated, so to speak, when I've had a big day. And even though I've been going through this now for nearly 11 years, trying to get other people on board with my condition is impossible, because there's no other way for them to get on board other than knowing exactly what I went through by going through what I went through. And we don't want that.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm a bit of a party pooper. I'm the guy who goes, I probably don't want to go down there today. Or I think it's time for me to end the day. Or no, I'll come to the pub with you, but I'm not drinking. And it feels like I'm always the guy who gets in the way of people's fun, and how other people interact with us is really strange, that they're not able to adjust to interacting with people who are, we'll call ourselves different, who are different. And I imagine that one of the hardest things for people to do who are around somebody who has communication issues is, I expect that would be even one of the hardest things to adjust to. And I'm not saying it to have a go at these people, our loved ones, our friends. I'm just saying it to make people aware of what might be happening amongst many other things that might be happening. It's a real challenge, and I think you can have an aphasia discussion with somebody like you every second day and come up with, again, newer and different ways of approaching this and seeing this, and it's a never-ending conversation. That's basically why I thought what we needed to do is reach out and give people and encourage people, no matter how long they've been on their aphasia journey, to still go after speech, and even if they're okay not communicating the way they used to, well, maybe just get curious about what you might be able to achieve just for fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like there's so much I could say about everything you just said, but
Hey.
you know, I mean, I think again, a huge part of their identity is they're robbed of their identity, whether it was their role in their family, their work, they have to completely shift. And that's a big task. And again, one that's ongoing, and I think they're always kind of searching. But I always encourage, go try something different, something that you've never. In fact, I had that discussion with one of my patients today. He's like, I'm tired of sitting inside, and he can't drive. And so he's, depending on his wife and his daughter to cart him around, and they don't always have time to do it. And so I was like, how about, trying to learn an instrument or doing a puzzle? I mean, he just turned his nose up at everything. But again, you can't expect to keep going through the way you necessarily did before. You have to kind of be willing to adapt and try new things. But I also think that, to your point about feeling different in social situation, I think that can be one of the biggest things. And I think people are uncomfortable with silence. And so we avoid it. So if that person's having trouble, and it's awkward, right? I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. It's awkward when you're face to face with somebody who is really struggling or not saying much, and you're having to constantly be that person. But you know what? Again, they are the same person. They want to have a conversation. The more that they're out there interacting and socializing, the better they're going to get. But it's hard. And I have talked to a lot of people about this, and a lot of individuals find that they end up needing to find a new group, a new social group, somebody who didn't know the old them. Because they can kind of start fresh. And I get that. But they're still sort of mourning, grieving that past life, their past friends, that social life that they had. And I'm sure you experienced some of that yourself.
Yeah. I actually never considered that with aphasia, but it's exactly what happened, right? So some people turn up and some people don't. Some people come out of the woodwork where you never expected them to turn up, and you're really pleasantly surprised, and you think, great. And then other people don't turn up and they don't know what to do, how to be. And at the beginning, I used to get mad at them, the ones that didn't know what to do, what to say, how to be, and the ones who made it about them, might say, I'm fatigued, and they say, oh my God, I'm tired too. And it's like, well, it's about me today. Shut up. It's about me. You're not tired like I am. I'm fatigued like I've never experienced in my 37 years. I just got tired going to the toilet. I mean, enough with telling me you're tired because you were online gaming until 3 a.m. and then you didn't get enough sleep before you went to work.
We're not relating to this situation. Yeah, this is not something we relate to.
Yeah, right. And it's like, okay. And then I like what you said about that, finding a new circle who didn't know the old you, because they don't have to adjust their lack of, or they don't have to find a new way to do themselves. So I think that's the biggest issue, is being around people who have stayed the same while you've been forced to change, or actually made a decision to change in the way that you interact with the world. Makes them have to look at themselves, and they might not be ready to look at themselves then. It's that whole perfect saying, is like, it's more about them than it is about me.
Right.
And that could be a good sign. If it's become about them and they don't know how to be around you, well, then that's a good sign to just sort of give them your blessings and let them go away. And that'll just fizzle out. And then hopefully that'll create some space for you to meet new people. But in order to meet new people, you have to go where the new people are. You have to turn up, and you have to
Which is hard.
Yeah. You have to be
It takes
prepared.
some guts.
Yeah,
It takes some
right.
guts.
To go there with your deficits and go, this is me. I'm here to interact with you, but I might not even know how to do that at the moment because I haven't got my voice. And maybe the only word I can say is fuck. And if that's the case, hopefully you're not going to take it the wrong way.
Right.
I
Right.
get it. It's really complicated, but it's a time for growth. It's a time, an opportunity for everyone to practice some personal development and some personal growth. And in amongst physical recovery, emotional recovery, mental recovery, somewhere in there goes personal development. I think it's really, really important to do personal development and go within and see what you're up for, what you need to attend to. And same with the caregivers. It's time for you. You can't be the same person around this person who is struggling with all these illnesses, because you're just going to get frustrated yourself, or you're going to get in the way. It's a saint that turns up to this new version of your loved one and just does the right thing and the perfect thing every time. You're not going to. It's just the way that it is. It's normal. And I think it just creates this. This is what stroke did for me. It just created an opportunity for personal development. And I had never done anything like that before. But most importantly, I never had a big why. That was my big why. That was the biggest why I ever had. It was like, oh my God, I want to be on this planet for as long as I can. And I want to interact with it as much as I can. How can I do that with all the stuff that I've got to live with, my deficits and all the challenges? And so, okay, I think I've got to overcome some of my own personal belief systems that might not be valid anymore. They may have been valid at the day before the stroke, and they may have been valid in my 20s and my teens, but that can't be how I go about approaching recovery after the stroke and with the deficits that I have. It's just not going to work. I need new ways to go about it. And I went out of my way to involve other people, like therapists, when I knew, for example, that I needed a therapist, because sometimes I didn't know I needed a therapist and nobody told me, like that gap that occurs for people. And I'm still nearly, I'm approaching nearly, what are we? It's been 11 years. February was 11 years since the first bleed. So I'm still going after improvement, recovery, bettering myself, becoming more, less ignorant. And this is what the podcast is about. It's even me, even I don't know how to interact around people who have aphasia, because I've never had aphasia. So I don't really get it, but I'm better than most people because I had a time where I was spaced out and didn't know how to communicate. So that's just me kind of trying to encourage the rest of the world to feel okay about being in a difficult spot, and then be comfortable that they can still chase recovery, even though it's been, 1, 2, 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I work so hard to get all of my patients to where you are, right? Like, how do I get them to accept this terrible thing that's happened to them, but also kick it into gear and use education, advocacy, and ultimately empower themselves to keep moving forward and feel good about themselves. Even if you do go to the pub and meet somebody new, tell them, hey, just so you know, I've had a stroke and I have some trouble talking. Because I think just opening that door lets them, they become a little bit more patient with you. You feel a little bit less tense because you've thrown it out there, and not everybody's comfortable with that. But then you've also educated. If you say, hey, I have aphasia, and they might think, what the heck is that? But you've already told them you have trouble communicating because you've had a stroke. That's enough, and I think the fact that you've educated somebody in that situation and, sort of advocated for yourself, and it can be kind of a nice cycle.
Yeah.
Um,
And the next part of that conversation could be, and by the way, I still like footy. Well, we call it footy, I beg your pardon. I still like football, or I still like baseball, or I still like whatever. And it's like, just address the elephant in the room, and now let's talk about the
exactly.
other dumb stuff that you do when you're at a pub.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I find too that I think that the caregivers, to your point too, end up still holding on to their old life.
Mm.
And then they're the middleman between inviting the friends over and talking for the individual with aphasia and trying to like call their buddies over and have a, hang out while watching a football game. And it's just not the same, and it just creates this disrupt. And it wasn't a fun social engagement. It was, exhausting for the caregiver, and the other one didn't have fun because they didn't talk the whole time, So I think it's about sort of figuring out, letting go of what was and what you thought might be, and moving forward. But I always also allow my patients, like, hey, have your crappy days.
Yeah.
Have your days where you sit there and, because, right, we don't all have wonderful, perfect, positive days. So, and you by all means should be allowed to do that. So have your crappy day, cry, feel bad for yourself, sit in your room and don't do anything, as long as you pick yourself back up that next day.
Yeah.
And again, who am I to say that? I'm not going through it, but I just feel like if you're sort of, their feelings are certainly warranted, and you let them know that, and that it's okay to have those crappy days. It allows them to kind of, overcome that and move forward. Because again, the recovery it's an ongoing kind of lifelong thing.
Yeah. I like to give people the opportunity to think about a question that goes something along the lines of, so whatever you want to do, you can do. However you want to behave, you can behave. However you want to think about that, you can think about. Just ask this question of yourself if you can every time. And it's like, is this behavior serving me? The behavior that I've chosen right now, and the way that I'm thinking right now, and the way that I'm talking right now, is it serving me in the long run? And if it isn't, then maybe you want to park it. Maybe you want to park that behavior and just live there, and just maybe come back to it one day if you feel like it, because it's been a while since you behaved that way, or you needed to do that or say that. But then what you might find is that you don't go back there as often as you perhaps had in the past, and that you might never go back there at all. Does this serve me? Has been one of the questions that has just completely changed my life, because it's usually comes after that pity party where I'm feeling bad about myself, and then it's like, okay, it's like a reset, but then it's next level. It's beyond just a reset, because it also makes me drop something and leave it away and leave it aside and not go back to it. And then it's the relearning and the readjusting of, okay, what can I do instead of a behavior that doesn't serve me? What can I do right now that's going to serve me? And in my case, if I was going through the inability to walk, for example, and I was having a bad day and I had just fallen because I took a few falls at home, it'd be, okay, I didn't break anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to get up off the couch like that again. I'm going to pay attention to where my leg is next time. And once I do that, I'll get better at it, and then I'll feel more comfortable being out and about in the community, walking on my own without my wife there. Because other than walking, I was very physically capable and cognitively capable of being out and about on my own. So it's like, okay, so I'm not going to that behavior of just getting up off the couch, and listen, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but my behavior of just getting up the couch without thinking, because that's what old Bill a week and a half ago was doing. that can't be the way that I get off the couch anymore, especially if I'm holding a plate where I've just finished a meal. I've got to do one or the other. I've got to use my hands, grab the couch, stand up, pay attention to where my leg is, move forward, and then pick up the plate, for example, and take it to the sink. So
can I ask you something?
yeah,
So do you think that just asking yourself, does this behavior serve me, allow you to then discover and tap into the behaviors that are more beneficial and do serve you?
yeah. So what was
Or is there something that has to happen in between there?
No, not necessarily, but it may not even. I may not even get an answer an hour or a day or a week after that. But what it does do, it automatically creates a place where my mind, body, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it, as soon as I ask that question, it knows the truth about what the answer is.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of interrupts my automatic nature of going there. And then even if I do go there and I ask myself that question a second time, it's kind of interrupted the neural pathways that are previously just firing off.
Mm.
And then it's slowly just goes away. And one of the things that I used to do was talk about myself in a negative way before the stroke anyway. And then I realized I used to say stuff like, nobody wants to do business with me when I'm doing business out of a garage, as if they knew where I was doing business out of, I'll never have a successful business if I don't have an office, and if it's not this size, and if it's not that, and if it's not this, and if I'm not driving this car. And then I used to compare myself to other people. Comparison in recovery is also a bit of an issue. People compare, and then they put deadlines on things.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used to do that. I used to compare myself to people who I assumed were more successful than me. And I realized real quickly, if I do that, does that behavior, comparing myself to other people, serve me? No. What does it do? Well, it makes me feel bad about myself. It makes me feel emotionally drained. It makes me feel unmotivated. It makes me feel all those things. Like, well, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't know what I prefer feeling, but I know I don't want to feel that way. So while I've discovered what I don't want to feel, and I'm learning what I prefer to feel, what I like to do is just get those language patterns. Does that behavior, I like to get those embedded. Does that behavior serve me? Does that behavior serve me? Because then I become the person who tells myself, rather than my wife or my son or my mother or my father telling me, hey, you shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
It's different for you to tell me I shouldn't be doing that. But if I'm telling myself, that's a very different thing. And I like to, and this is an analogy that some people might think is weird, and that's how I approach God, right? So this is a very interesting thing for me that I kind of got to after the stroke, because everyone was telling me, did you find God? And I know people found God, and that's great, no issue. But for me, I respond now by saying, God, I'm God. God is me. I'm not the guy down the road telling you I'm Jesus. I'm not that guy, but God's within me, so that it's not an external source that I go to for solutions. And then if that solutions don't come, I get disappointed in that external source, and then I feel like I have nowhere else to go. So I believe the solutions are within us. I believe I'm God. I believe that I know what's best for me, but I just need to ask myself the correct questions and stop saying certain things that I don't need to say.
I think that holds you accountable.
That's it. It's all about me.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I go to therapy, be it with a speech pathologist or physical therapist or an occupational therapist, when I go there, what I'm doing is going to for them to tell me the things that I didn't know, that I needed to know about recovery. And then if they're telling me what I needed to know about recovery, and I'm taking responsibility for my own recovery and not making it your responsibility, well, then we're going to work together really well as a team.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that dramatically changed the way that I used to see therapists before I became unwell. So I had my chiropractor on speed dial. We have a property maintenance business, so we lift heavy things and we work too hard and we bend the wrong way and we do all this stuff. And I used to outsource the way my body felt. I used to outsource that to him. I'm
Mhm.
paying you, you fix up my back, I go to work tomorrow. Right. And it was the way that I went about it for about 15 years. And he would say stuff like, okay, well, you need to pay attention to how you lift. You need to pay attention to this and you need to pay attention to that. And it was just in one ear, out the other. And then it was to the extent where when I had my entire left side wasn't working, I went to him and told him to fix my back. And he said to me, it's not your back, go to the hospital. And I said to him, I can't go to the hospital. I'm busy tomorrow. You need to fix me now, and I need to go to work tomorrow. So I had got to that extent where I was making it their responsibility to do all the things that were necessary, and I wasn't taking responsibility. So that's one of the things that I got out of stroke recovery very early on was I need to become God, my own God within me. I need to search in me for the answers. Somebody now needs to tell me what the right questions are to ask. That's all it was. And one of those right questions was, is that behavior serving me?
Mhm.
And nobody ever asked me that. And therefore, I never knew to ask that. And when I did learn to ask that, it just changed everything for me because I realized that Brooke wasn't the worst therapist, and I happened to find the worst one out of all the therapists. And my occupational therapist wasn't the terrible one because she looked at me funny, and it was the way that I was responding. And these people were there to help me, and I was doing them a disservice because I wasn't being the proper me, the proper patient, the right kind of patient that's going to get them the results that they can get for people.
Sure.
It was all about me. And it became about me. And maybe there is some other people in the periphery that made my life hard who didn't know they were doing it. But in the end, it was more about me than about them. And that's kind of why I wanted to really get you on here to discuss some of the things that we've already discussed so that when somebody has said to you, you've hit a plateau, that's actually not about them. That's you believing them,
Right.
and you thinking that that means that you should now listen to them and that you should stop going after your recovery. It all comes down to you, how you respond to people like that. So hopefully that gives people some things to think about. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you're right on. And I think that the challenging part is sometimes I don't think people know how to take control of their recovery. And once they, and maybe it's different for different people, right? Like the answer for you was that question, it really helped you and was a game changer.
Yeah.
That same question may not,
Correct.
be the thing for people, but I think it's so hard to help people search for whatever that thing is to help them take control.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The mine's the example that I gave that kind of opened up the door for me, the path for me. So whatever that is for somebody else, hopefully you can discover it by being a little more curious about your own needs and the deeper needs, not I need my, I don't know, whatever you used to do, I need to do the deeper needs, the ones that really matter to make your life better and to help you get back on your feet, whatever they are.
right.
And
Right.
all I'm saying is that if somebody as dumb as me could do it, anyone can do it. Because I was quite an intelligent guy. I pretended I was confident. I I interacted in a way with people that nobody would know that I had the insecurities that I had. And when I call myself dumb, I'm not being rude or mean to myself or anything like that. I was being ignorant. I was completely ignorant about how I was treating myself and how I was behaving. And when I started to learn about myself and my ignorance about me went away, I got out of my way. I got out of the way of my recovery, and I started to take into consideration things I never had before. And I started to um, park those old thoughts and behaviors. Like I started to suspend my disbelief, and I started to just put things aside and go, okay, well, let's park that. Let's park that. Let's park that. Everything got parked because it wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to be able to be a new me, get recovery, be around for my kids, go back to work. It took 7 years, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It took me nearly 7 years to get back to work and to start a podcast. I started the podcast, 5 years or 4 or 5 years after all this. Nothing happened straight away. All this person that you see that's got all these thoughts and these ideas, that didn't come overnight. It took a long time. So that's the other thing. I don't want people to think that because I'm talking about this the way I am, it's easy for you. Look at how you are. Look how you've recovered. It wasn't all roses for me. It was really hard for many, many years. And it's still hard. And that's why I have a podcast, because I need to talk about it every day. This is my therapy. And I don't do it just for fun. I don't do it just so that everyone else can benefit from it. I also benefit from this podcast. So you see how I've made
But
it.
again, you've taken your situation and turned it into, like, I mean, it's the type of people that say my stroke, changed my life for the better. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. Me.
But I mean, again, it's like you are that perfect example, and it's fascinating and inspiring too to hear you, because I think this is what so many people, dealing with, stroke deficits and aphasia need to hear. And talking with somebody who's gone through it, there is such a lack of mental health professionals that are able to and have the knowledge and the depth of knowledge that's necessary to really help people with it. And to know, how do you have talk therapy, right, with somebody who's struggling to talk? And there's a huge gap, and it's bad, because these people need help and they need that support. But to me, I'm starting to feel more and more that as I've searched for, a mental health specialist who I can bring on board with me and help my patients, I think it's people who've gone through it who are ultimately going to be the best.
You've nailed it.
You're hired. The best, like, emotional, seriously. I did hire one of my young stroke survivors, and she runs groups for me, and she has one-on-one meetings with some of my patients. And I think it's been like the best matchup because they've been through it. They know.
Yeah.
And if somebody, and again, it feels good for her too. I mean, she benefits from it just as much. I think there's some power in that.
Oh my gosh, there is. In Melbourne, there's a event called a Night for Aphasia, and it's run by by a speech therapist who I've interviewed in the podcast. I can't remember when, but it was quite a few episodes ago, but I'll put it in the show notes for anyone who wants to go back and listen to that. And Olivia O'Hare is her name. And Olivia has organized a night where a whole bunch of people get together and raise money for different causes related to aphasia, and it goes to help some other people that are going through that get therapy, all sorts of different things.
Very cool.
And the main speakers are people who have had aphasia and gone through recovery with Olivia and her team, and they get on stage and they present their story. However long it takes or however it comes out, everyone's got kind of a different way to communicate, but they're all there. And all the people around us were young occupational therapists coming through their studies and doing apprenticeships and all different sorts of things. stroke survivors. There was a whole bunch of other people that weren't stroke survivors that had aphasia. And man, she filled out a room. There was probably about 200 or 300 people there. It was a
Amazing.
sensational night. And it's the kind of night that if I had aphasia, I would want to be in the crowd listening to those people talking, going, they used to be like me in the crowd and now they're on the stage.
Yeah.
And it's
Right. Like, I mean, it doesn't get more inspiring than that,
it doesn't. It doesn't. And that's the part where I sort of said, if somebody as dumb as me can recover from things that are really difficult to recover from, then anyone can. And if you relate to being dumb like me, then you're the perfect candidate. Like, you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it, and you're going to find a way. You're going to find a way to be in the world and to get back into the world and to make your mark on the world and to do all the things that you want to do.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
And I always love referring back to the physicist Stephen Hawking, the guy couldn't speak, talk, walk, couldn't do anything.
Right.
And he was still at the top of his game.
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone else learnt how to be around him. They all adjusted themselves. They all stepped up and they all grew and they all found new ways to interact with somebody who most people would have written off.
Right.
And the only person who didn't write himself off was him.
Right. Yeah. Right.
If he had written himself off, everyone else would have just gone, oh, well, forget this guy. Let's move on to the next guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a powerful thing, absolutely.
Brooke, I really appreciate you saying yes and being on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. I appreciate you having me, and it's so nice to meet you and hear your story as well.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. To learn more about Brooke and the services she provides, you can go to iraphasiatherapy.com. And for more ways to connect with Brooke and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you would like to try the course 5 Foods to Avoid After Stroke, go to recoveryafterstroke.com/courses to get on board now. And if you would like to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to leave the show a 5-star review and a few words about what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, comment below the video. Like this episode, and to get notifications of future episodes, subscribe to the show on the platform of your choice. Now, doing this part makes a big difference to other people finding the podcast, people who have had a stroke that are like you, who are stuck and looking for solutions and looking to not feel alone. So by doing that, leaving the show a 5-star review, it'll be shown more often by the search engines and it'll be given preference so that people who are searching for this type of content can find it easier. And hopefully that'll make a difference to their lives. So I'll really appreciate it if you can do a review. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your experience, come and join me on the show. Interviews are not scripted. You do not have to plan for them. All you need to do to qualify is be a stroke survivor or care for someone who is a stroke survivor. Just go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the contact form, and as soon as I receive your request, I'll respond with more details on how you and I can choose a time that works for us both to meet over Zoom. Thanks again for being here and listening. I really appreciate you. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.